Have you ever tried doing crochet? It's pretty interesting and cool. Just take some yarn and interconnect it with one another to create pretty patterns. From floral designs, anime characters, to picturesque sceneries. The sky is the limit. I like to picture the perpetuation of life and interdependence as like an art piece, a crochet piece. The yarn interlocks with one another to create various patterns, similar to how organisms in this world, like the yarn, depend on each other to help create a beautiful and healthy ecosystem, like a final project of a crochet piece. Life is never ending. Life and love are everywhere in society. Hello everyone, my name is Sofia Hidalgo, an 11th grader who is excited to express my appreciation of the mundane. Have you ever stopped to think about how life perpetuates itself and the interconnectedness of all living beings? Today, we'll look at the fascinating notion of life's perpetuation and the interconnectedness of creatures. The topics and definition that I'll be mentioning in this TED Talk are topics that were taught to us as early as 4th grade. Furthermore, I've done extensive research with regards to the topics that I'll be mentioning, so there's nothing really to worry about. Now let's tackle more in depth of the definition of our two terms, which are the interdependence and the perpetuation of life. Let's begin with the definition of perpetuation of life. According to the official Oxford Language Dictionary, quote-unquote, the continuation or preservation of a situation or idea. That is the definition of perpetuation. Life, an internal flame, refuses to be extinguished. It persists through the ages, perpetuating its existence in awe-inspiring ways. The continuance or maintenance of life through diverse systems and processes is referred to as life perpetuation. It refers to living creatures' ability to reproduce, pass on genetic material, and maintain the survival of their species over generations. Life's continuation includes both sexual and asexual reproduction processes. It refers to living creatures' ability to reproduce, pass on genetic material, and maintain the survival of their species over generations. Life's continuation includes both sexual and asexual reproduction processes, in which organisms produce offspring who inherit their genetic features and have the capacity to carry on the lineage. Moving on with the definition of interdependence, it is the connectivity and mutual reliance of diverse creatures or entities within an ecosystem or system. It is referred to again as interdependence. Think of it as a thread. Interconnecting it with another thread creates a beautiful and colorful pattern. It emphasizes the idea that no organism lives or works in isolation, but rather depends on another for many elements of survival, development, and overall well-being. Interdependence can take the shape of ecological interactions such as mutualism, which benefits both creatures, parasitism, which benefits the organism at the expense of others. Now that we have our definitions out of the way, let's dive more on how the world shows us how it is perpetual. In the simplest answer, the world shows us perpetuation by reproducing. Let's start by defining sexual and asexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction, to simply put it, this involves the fusion of gametes from two parent organisms, resulting in offsprings with unique genetic traits. The process of reproduction occurs when a sperm, a male sex gamete, meets with an egg cell, a female sex gamete. Asexual reproduction, on the other hand, is a process or is a kind of reproduction in which offsprings are produced without the need of gametes or sex cells, or the fusing of genetic material from two parents. Asexual reproduction allows a single parent organism to produce offspring that is genetically identical or highly similar to itself. Let's talk about reproduction in plants, namely asexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction. Under asexual reproduction, there are also different methods in which plants could asexually reproduce, namely natural vegetative propagation and artificial vegetative propagation. Now, to give meaning to natural vegetative propagation, It is a process of plants to asexually reproduce. Its name, natural, indicates that it can do the process by itself with no artificial means. Here are some ways that plants asexually reproduce through natural vegetative propagation. Runners. Some plants send out special stems called runners, which grow along the ground and develop new plants at certain points. For example, berry plants do this. Next is rhizomes. Plants like bamboo and ginger have underground stems called rhizomes. These rhizomes can sprout new shoots and grow into new plants. Next are bulbs. Plants like onions and tulips grow from underground structures. Tubers are swollen underground parts of a stem. Potatoes are a well-known example of plants that grow from tubers. Next is our artificial vegetative propagation. To give meaning to artificial vegetative propagation, it is a method where people intentionally create new plants without using seeds. It's like plant cloning, basically. And here are the ways that artificial vegetative propagation can occur. These are the common ways. Cutting. In this method, a piece of a plant, like a stem or leaf, is cut and placed in soil or water until it develops roots and grows into a new plant. Roses and mints can be propagated this way. Grafting. Grafting involves joining two different plants together. A branch or a bud from one plant is attached to another plant. This method is often used in fruit tree cultivation. Think of it as the fusion of two completely different plants, and in order to form a new whole different plant. The third way is layering. In layering, a branch of stem of a plant is bent down and covered with soil while still attached to the parent plant. Roots grow from the covered part, and once they're established, the new plant can be separated from the parent. Natural vegetative propagation happens in nature when certain plants can grow new ones without seeds using methods like runners, rhizomes, bulbs, and tubers. Artificial vegetative propagation is a human-made way to create new plants, intentionally using methods like cutting, grafting, layering. These methods help us to grow specific plants with desired traits and characteristics. Moving on to the sexual ways that a plant reproduces. Again, to put it simply, sexual reproduction in plants is the process through which male and female reproductive cells combine to form a new plant. So pollination is the process wherein plants reproduce. Pollinators such as bees and birds move pollen grains from the male part of a flower, the anther, to the female part of the flower, or stigma, during pollination. The styles serve as the tube to which the pollen can be transported to the ovary. Once within the ovary, pollen fertilizes an ovule, culminating in the production of a seed. This seed will eventually develop into a new plant. Pollination is the process of transporting pollen from one plant to another in order to fertilize the ovule and form seeds, which develop into a new plant. Reproduction in animals. Animals can reproduce asexually as well through various methods, each with its own unique way of creating new offspring without the need for fertilization or mating. Here's a summary of the ways animals asexually reproduce. Binary fission. Some simple animals, like certain types of bacteria and protozoans, reproduce through binary fission. In this process, the parent cell divides itself into two identical daughter cells. Next is budding. Budding is common in animals like hydra and some sea anemones. A small bud or outgrowth forms on the parent organism, which eventually detaches and develops into a new genetically identical individual. Up next is fragmentation. Some animals, such as starfish and flatworms, can reproduce by breaking their bodies into smaller pieces or fragments. Each fragment can regenerate and grow into a completely new organism. Next is parthenogenesis. In parthenogenesis, females of certain species can reproduce offsprings without fertilization by males. The offsprings are genetically identical to the mother. Some insects, reptiles, and fish exhibit parthenogenesis. Sexual reproduction processes in both animals and humans are quite similar, since both of us are mammals. Again, sexual reproduction in animals and humans is a process in which male and female sex gametes meet and to fertilize for the production of an offspring. For this process to be possible, it must need two parents. The genetic makeup of the offspring will have an increased chance of having varied genes. Now, how does the world show us the interdependence of each organism? The world's organisms display interdependence in a number of ways. The notion of interdependence states that organisms rely on one another for survival, development, and overall well-being. Here are some instances of how creatures interact. Food chains. The simplest way that the world shows us interdependence is in the food that we eat. Food chains and food webs connect organisms, allowing energy and nutrients to pass from one organism to the next. Plants, for example, collect solar energy and transform it into food via photosynthesis. Herbivores eat plants, whereas predators eat herbivores. This dependency guarantees that energy and nutrients are transferred throughout the ecosystem. Pollination. Many blooming plants rely on pollinators such as bees, butterflies, and birds to carry pollen from blossom to flower. Both the plants and the pollinators profit from this mutualistic interaction. Plants benefit from pollen transfer for reproduction, while pollinators benefit from nectar or pollen as a food source. Symbiotic connection. Symbiotic connections demonstrate micro-level interdependence. A prominent example is mutualistic symbiosis, in which both species benefit. Pollinators such as bees and butterflies, for example, rely on flowers for nectar when pollinating. Another example is the interaction between some fish and clearing shrimp, in which the fish clear themselves of parasites, while the shrimp discover a food supply. Ecosystem. Creatures provide a variety of ecosystem services that benefit both other creatures and the entire ecosystem. Trees, for example, produce oxygen, control the climate, and provide as habitat for a variety of animals. Wetlands filter water, which reduces pollutants and provides home for a variety of creatures. These functions highlight species connection and dependency in maintenance of a healthy ecosystem. Lastly is decomposition. Bacteria and fungi, for example, play an important role in decomposing dead organic materials. They return nutrients to the ecosystem, making them accessible for use by other creatures. The nutrient cycle would be interrupted without decomposers, impacting the availability of nutrients for other species. In conclusion, the perpetuation of life and interdependence are not only fascinating aspects of the natural world, but also critical for the continued existence and balance of ecosystems. We have seen how the interplay of species, their reliance on one another, and the delicate web of relationships contribute to stability and reliance. As we contemplate the rich fabric of life, keep in mind that every species, no matter how large or how little, plays an important function in the larger scheme of things. From tiny pollinators to enormous predators, each organism has a place and purpose within the interwoven web of life. Recognize our stewardship of the earth and the necessity of maintaining biodiversity and protecting ecosystems. We secure a sustainable future for ourselves and future generations by appreciating and supporting the continuation of life and interdependence. So let me leave you guys with this thought. When we recognize the interconnectedness of all living things, we not only acknowledge the intricate connections that maintain life, but also find inspiration for our own lives. Let us appreciate and safeguard life's diversity, recognizing that our choices today will influence the world of tomorrow. Once again, I am Sofia Hidalgo. I'm here to say that there is always magic in the money.